Do you need a last-minute gift really quickly? You want it to be handmade and you don't know what to do? Then this is the video for you. Hello everyone, I'm Caroline, and today I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy, well, quick relative, you'll see what I mean. You can take as much time over this as you want to. And it's called a Zokin, which is a Japanese method of reusing old material. So you can use anything that's a bit thin, a bit tired, it's got holes in it. You'll come up with a way of turning it into a beautiful Zokin, and it just looked like nothing and rubbish and something to be thrown away before you started. This is a pile I'm making for a member of my family. They love these. Every Christmas I give them some. So I've been working on these all year, just if I've got some spare time. I'll show you those at the end, but let's get stuck into the nitty-gritty. So what are you going to need to make a Zokin? This is my bag or box of what I call my flimsy material fabric. It's no good for patchwork, really. It's too thin. I generally get this from if you've got a dress and it's got like a petticoat lining in it. This is mainly where this all came from. This was a rather large blue dress, and I don't know if the camera is showing you just how thin this is. You can't do a lot with it other than lining unless you want to make a Zokin. Now, Zokins were traditionally made by the Japanese because they'd have clothes that were no good, absolutely useless. They couldn't be worn again. They really knew how to recycle a long, long time ago. And so they'd settle down of an evening and they'd cut out some of the bits of fabric, the good bits, and join them together and make a washcloth. You can use these in so many ways. You can make washcloths, you can make makeup removers, you can make bookmarks, you can make just a decorative front and stick it to a Christmas card. So much you can do with this. So I thought I'd make a few bits and pieces on camera and then we can see how easy it is. So I've got all my fabrics in here, wondering what colour to go for. If I have a look at my selection, I'd like to make a different colour. So I've got pinks and I haven't got yellow. I got this yellow. It's a bit patterned. I like to make something with more of a plain, I don't mind a bit of decoration, but I prefer to use a plain fabric. I've got this one here, which was actually a dress, but it's very, very flimsy. So I think we'll go for, I got this plain yellow here. I'll go for this because the Zokin is made of layers and layers. I like to do 3 layers. You can do more if you like, but I think for me, 3 is enough on 2 counts. 1, you don't want it too thick because otherwise that really slows down your stitching, gives you sore hands. And 2, it's a bit bulky to use. I just like the feel of a thinner one. Or the hand, they call it, isn't it, when it's the feel of a fabric. So I'm going to get this, and you can specifically decide what size you need beforehand. I don't do it that way. I just think, right then, I'm going to take this and I'm going to snip it. It's far too wide, so I'm going to snip it about there, tear it. And then I need 3 pieces. You can either cut it into 3 or you can fold it into 3. If I fold this in half, I think that's a decent size there. So I think I'll get another piece. The advantage you've got is you don't have to have matching fabric. You can have different anyway. And the one in the middle you won't be seeing, so you can use any old fabric for that. It can be your ugliest fabric you really want to get rid of, but can't think of a use for it. And I'm not an accurate person. You know me. My sewing and my cutting out is never perfect. But I don't mind because I enjoy it. And when this is made, it covers a multitude of sins. Oops, I didn't cut that bit. You don't have to cut it. I got to cut it anyway, just so that you can see what to do if you've got 3 smaller pieces. So you can use this thin fabric. You can use a thicker fabric. That's not a problem at all. I would recommend it's 100% cotton, just for the absorbency, and it's just easier to use if you're going to use it in any sort of situation where you're cleaning up. Also, you could use denim. Denim looks lovely, but word of warning, it is quite thick, and I'd never go more than 2 layers deep with denim. And you can even use old towels. They're great, and what you can do is use a towel on the one side and then a piece of fabric on the other, and it's great. It's dual purpose, and it's a great way of using up those broken old towels that you were going to throw away. Right, so I've got my 3 pieces here. Now, I would recommend you iron them. Should I iron them? Am I going to be really well behaved and iron them, or am I going to show you what I usually do? I'll iron them. There we go. And now you can either sew them as they are, you can baste them together, or I like to just stick in a few safety pins just to make sure it doesn't wander offline too much. You can use normal pins, but because I'll show you the sewing method, and you can see it is much easier to not use pointy pins that are going to stick in your fingers. Got a tub of assorted sizes of drawing pins here. Safety pins, they're not drawing pins. You couldn't do this with drawing pins, could you? There we go. Just to roughly hold it. And what I am going to do is trim these now to the size of the smallest edge. I don't always do this, but what you will find if you don't do this, sometimes you sew into the edge, you don't realise the other side isn't quite the same length, and then you haven't gone through all 3 layers of fabric. And also it trims off that wonky bit there. Look how wonky that is. And as I say, you don't have to do this. I'm being very well behaved because you're all watching me. I usually make these in a very quick and haphazard manner, and you can't tell when they're made. So you can cut what corners you want to cut or not cut any. It's up to you. There we go. I will be throwing those scraps away, but you can't get much smaller than that, can you? Now, it's not even perfectly square, but that doesn't even matter. If you've got a piece of fabric that's a bit weird shaped, just go for it. So what do I need to convert this scrappy bit of fabric into a Zokin? Let's have a look. I've got here some embroidery floss. I always pick these up at thrift stores or charity shops because it's a great way of getting embroidery floss really cheaply. So I'll just have a look if there's anything on here that jumps out at me as saying, oh, I'll go good with yellow. If I pull that there, let's have a look. You can lay that there. I like the green. Oh, yes. I'm going to go for green. Shall I go for 1 shade or 2 shades of green? Oops, what's somebody done there? You have the most ingenious ways of storing odd bits of embroidery floss when you get a bag like this. I'm not sure if that's enough. So I'll have a look see if I got more. No, they're all different. So I'm going to go for... Oh, wait a minute. Look at this one, hiding on the end. I'm going to go for this line. No, I'm not. I'm going for the dark one. I'm going to take it all off because I'm going to use at least that much. And I'm going to go for the medium green as well. I think that'll be nice. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of this yellow, any yellow. It's just to try and be a little bit close to the colour of the stitching around the edge you're going to do. It won't be seen, but just in case it is, it's good to have a sort of similar colour. Right, let's talk needles. Now, there are small sewing needles, and you can use a normal, if I pick this one up, a normal length sewing needle, and you can just do 1 stitch or 2 or 3 stitches at a time. But the traditional way of making a Zokin is to use a longer needle. And I've got this pack here of longer needles. So you can choose, if you're not feeling very brave, then you can go for a little bit longer, but I go for the longest one I can. So that's that needle there, and you can get even longer needles than this. So I've got my embroidery floss, I've got my needle, and I need one more thing. I have to put my posh ring on. What do you think? Does that enhance my fingers? That is not what it's for. I'm sure some of you will know what this is for, and some of you won't. It reminds me of the doctors used to wear a light like this on their heads when they were operating. But this, if you're right-handed like me, you pop it on your middle finger, and that bit goes there, and then you can tighten it up if you need to. Now I'm just going to, instead of using the whole floss to go around the outside of this, I'm just going to use 2 threads. You can if you want to. do this on the sewing machine. It'll save you a ton of time, especially if you really are rushing. And if you'd like to do a few, you can bulk create them then. You can cut out lots and lots of squares, sew around them all, and then settle down to the hand sewing. And I'll show you a way you don't even have to hand sew them if you're really in a hurry. That'll be at the end when I show you the ones I've already made. Run your hand down your floss a few times, because otherwise it'll still be curly, but it won't be as curly as if you don't do it. And then it's like trying to sew with a wiggly worm. This won't be seen, the end of this, so you can either start it off with an invisible begin, I don't know what you call that, where you go over your own stitch. I just put a knot in, and it doesn't matter how big that knot is, as long as it's big enough to not pull through the fabric. So you're going to want to sew most of the outside, but not all the way. So I'm going to start here and end here, because we're going to need to turn this in the right way. Now just do one stitch here. You don't have to be too far from the edge, because you're going to stitch around the edge when this is finished with like a top stitch, and that will stop everything unraveling. Now I'm going to show you how you use this big needle and this thimble. Don't get distracted. You wait forever for my words. So you just do a running stitch, but you don't pull your needle through. You keep going and going. Now you will see some people doing this sort of stitch, and they doof, 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 doof. A lot of those have been sped up. So don't think, oh, I'm so slow. That is about an average speed that people do Zokins. Some people are really whiz kids at it, but generally that's a good speed. And then when you get to the end of your row, you pull it through, and that does save an amazing amount of time. What I like to do on the corners then is I'll just do one small locking stitch like that. Oh, this is a nuisance. One small locking stitch, and that way then you're not going to, when you pull it through, you're not going to crinkle all the edges up. It's got like a full stop on it. And then you can go down here, and in theory, I should be able to get right to the end of this side, which is quite a decent size, all with one movement. And I suppose it's one movement, one needleful we call it, because obviously there's a lot of movement going on. But if you were doing this with your hand there, this needle is going to get your hand really sore. You rest the edge of the needle, or the end of the needle, onto that strange thimble thing, and now you can push as hard as you need to. Especially this is important if you're using a very, very thick fabric, because it will get very, very tedious, very, very sore, very, very quickly. And what a lot of varies. When you first start, you might find this a bit awkward and think, oh, it's quicker to just do little hand stitches. I would recommend you stick with it, because it really doesn't take long at all before you get the hang of this. And you don't have to worry about the size of your stitches being even, because this is inside. So it's a good place to start your first ever sewing with this technique. And then pop it off the needle, pull it through, and look at that. How quick and easy is that? Again, and you can see there, if I hadn't trimmed that down there, I would have now been sewing and not going through all the layers. Ask me how I know that. Yes, I did it so many times. That's the only thing with this, is you get a little bit carried away and you don't notice that your cotton or your thread is starting to double. I've done that several times as well. Right, okay then. So what I do here, you can see that's really firmly fixed. So I get my scissors, snip off there, don't tell anyone. If you're a bit worried, do another locking stitch just in case anything does decide it's going to come out. I think it'll be fine. And now, show you how to do it properly. Make sure you've got enough length there so you're not going to end up with your thread, like mine, doubled up. Right, where we go? We're a bit low there. So I'm going to, again, it doesn't matter if they're not perfectly square. Just going to work my way up very gradually. And I love the charm, or part of the charm of these being the fact that they're not square. They're never all the same size. I make a point of not making the same size because I just think it's more fun, especially when you're giving them as a gift. If you're going to give a selection, one, you can make the bundle going from largest on the bottom, smallest on the top. It looks more entertaining. And also, different size will be good for different jobs. The first time I made this, or these, for my daughter and son-in-law, they said that of all the Christmas presents they had, this is the one that they use the most. And then when they're dirty, they just throw them in the washing machine. And by the end of the year, really, they're ready for another set. Put that through. So I'll get back to you when I've gone right the way around and to there. It's not going to take me long at all. So now I'm right at the end. Well, not right at the end. I'm right at the end of the bit I want to sew. Go over the last stitch twice just to lock it into place. And then take your pins out. And there you go. Time to turn it inside out, find the hole. Now, at this point, it can go either the way you want it to or the way you don't. You need to be sure you're going to open it up on the pattern that you want, because there you're getting the inside of this one and this piece of fabric, if you see what I mean, remembering there are 3 layers. And if you turn it over there, you're going to get the outside of this one and this one. So if you're using a pattern, then just be careful that you're going to see the bit you want to see. Otherwise, you'll end up with the tatty bit on the outside and the good bit on the inside. It sounds technical, but you'll get the hang of it. You can see now why it was so important to put a good, strong lock-in stitch at the end, because this does take a little bit of effort. Turn it in the right way. Now at this point you can iron it if you want to. Am I going to iron it? Am I going to be well behaved again? I'll pop my iron on. And then it'll take seconds. I think the thing that always takes the most with a small item is warming up the iron, but I don't like to leave it on all the time. 2 reasons. 1, it seems like a waste of electricity. And 2, I'm forever bumping into things and knocking things over. And then I end up with a hot iron landing on the floor. Now you can see, because I've done big stitches, it's looking a bit loose, but don't worry about that at all. If you've done this with a sewing machine, then that won't be a problem. Then I've got the hole here, which I'll need to tuck in before I iron it. So it's ironed in the right place. It tends to fall into place if you pull both ends like that. That's near enough. So now I'm just going to iron quickly all the way around this. So now I'm going to change into my green cotton or thread. I think I'll use the lighter one around the outside. I am wondering whether to... I don't always, but I think I'm going to separate this into just 3 strands for going around the outside, because I do find it quite hard work to pull the whole thickness through, because when we go around here, we're going to be doing effectively, 6 layers of fabric. Now you can skip that step completely. I'll just pull this and then I'll show you how you can skip that step. There we go. Where the hole is, wherever it is, I can't find it now, over here, you can just do some very small stitches in the proper colour, the right colour, and you'll be done. If you're using a sewing machine, then you can go around with the same thread as you used to stitch them up, and then that'll be done in no time. I don't like any sewing machine stitches showing if I'm going to be doing hand stitching for the other part. I just think the contrast makes it stand out more. put a knot in the end of my floss and then find the hole. I've lost it again. Where's it gone? Can you see it? There it is. So now I'm going to go up inside here and out just below the line where I've sewn, if you see what I mean, just inside the seam there. And then I'm going to come across. I'm just going to do a running stitch all the way around the outside, and this is quite hard on the hands, even using a thin fabric. So if you're using a thicker one, I wouldn't bother. I just top stitch over where the join is, but I like the look of this. And this is a thing that you can't go wrong with this sort of thing. There's no rules. It's a form of sashiko stitching, but you haven't got to come up with any fancy, dancy, clever ideas at all. That's about as much as I'm going to get on that needle. There we go. You can make these as fancy as you like, but you can really make them as plain as you like too. And I'm actually liking the idea. I'm thinking as I'm doing this, because I haven't pre-planned. I never pre-plan with a Zokin because I never know what fabric I'm going to make, what size is going to turn out, and what inspiration I got at the time. So I'm thinking of doing just like blocks of squares at the moment, but I may change my mind because I've got a long way to go around the rest of this yet. And the corners of these is particularly challenging. I would recommend that you just do a few stitches at a time around the corners, because it's also, I'm going to do it like this, a little bit ruffled as well. So you've got a lot more layers in small parts, and then you'll end up hurting your hands. And at the end of the day, if you like sewing, your hand is one of the tools you've got, and you wouldn't mistreat your sewing machine. You wouldn't mistreat your needles or your best fabric scissors. So try to look after your hands. I know I get terrible trouble with my hands, and it's so annoying when you have to rest and you can't do any sewing. So you're better off just looking after them, giving them a bit of TLC, making sure they don't overdo it. So you can see you just lean the end of the needle on this part here, and then that gives you the push. Your finger and thumb are direct in this, but they're not putting any pressure on, which is a great way to look after your hands, because otherwise they have to do all the work. And I have very dicky thumbs. They don't like doing work. So anything that saves my thumbs is a good thing for me. And you can see there's no way I'm getting a whole run on this needle. It's just too thick. But as soon as I've gone around the outside, that's all over with. Right, I'll see you when I've gone all the way around the outside.
Hello, Caroline. This is Phyllis from Tennessee, one of your longtime fans, and you inspire me to do slow stitching. And I wanted to share with you a couple little types of items that I've been doing. These are mug mats, mug rugs, I think people call them. It's batik with just batting on the back, and these are some blanks that I'll add to, do some things with them like I've done with these. Just add some little pieces of cloth, and there's a button, and do a lot of slow stitching on there. And it's just a lot of fun to sit and enjoy while I'm watching YouTube or listening to podcasts, that kind of thing. This is the one I did last night. And here's another one that I've done from a gel print that I did on material, and a few little bookmarks. These make good gifts. People enjoy the fact that they're soft and flexible, and I've given a lot of these away to friends. But it's just it's something anyone can do. It's just material, fabric, scraps, whatever you like, and just put them together in a way that pleases you, and that might be appealing to someone else. So people like homemade things, and I enjoy doing these and want to share them with you. Have a good day.
Now you've got this far, you need to come up with a plan of what you're going to do. So there are several alternatives. You can just do whatever haphazard stitches all over if you want to. You can, that's called seed stitch. You just, whatever, little stitches on all different angles all around the place, fill it in. You can draw a grid where you go down like that and then across like that. The problem with that, unless it's completely square, it will look a bit weird. You can do lines every ½ inch, every quarter of an inch. I think smaller than quarter of an inch apart just gets too much. Or you can draw a design. Now, I was going to draw a design, but I think it'll be better to show you just with the stitches, how to do the stitches. And that way then you can just work on a design yourself and it'll be really easy. I've got these pens here. Now, you can get them, like I'll use what colour have I least used? The black. I'll use the black. You use them and then you iron them off when you're finished and all the colour disappears. They do come with little covers, but I find they run out so quickly. I can't be bothered put them in the pen thing. They work perfectly fine without. So let's have a look. I think I'll go from this side here and I'll do... I've got half an idea in my mind. I'd like to do every inch. I think I'll do that and I can always fill in the gap afterwards. So draw a line down. There's an inch. And then put your line of your ruler down on that inch line and draw another one. And then, oh, I know, I've got a different idea. I'm going to do the same the other side. Like this. And just let your creativity flow. Whatever you fancy, if you fancy curves, if you fancy straight lines. Straight lines are always easier. I have to say that. I'd love to say that it's as easy to do curves, but it's not. So I'm going to do 2 there. And then I think I'll do 2 short ones here. I'm measuring from the line of stitching. There. I can feel some creativity coming on. I don't want to have any creativity. I want to be very basic so that I can get this finished. I'd love this video to be out this weekend, so you've got time to make them over Christmas. But if you're watching this in the summer or whenever, a Zokin isn't just for Christmas. It's for any time of year, any celebration you like. Ooh, I want to draw some flowers in the middle. I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to do that. And then they really don't have to be perfect flowers. I'm just going to have some fun. If you've got a flower stencil, you can use a flower stencil. I just think this will be quite entertaining. Do one here. Hopefully it won't crash into that one. No, it doesn't. The tighter your curves, the longer it's going to take you. So one big flower would be faster. And I'm going to do a little one here, which I'm going to really regret. Like that. And you can draw. And if you don't like it, you can rub it out using your iron. I'll draw another little one over here. There. Like that. Now, I like that. I know some people may say, oh, it's a bit naive. I like it. And as long as I'm enjoying making it, then I think that's all that counts, because I know my recipient loves these anyway. They're happy with any pattern, so I'll be fine. To start here, I'm going to go in through the fabric, making sure I'm only going underneath one layer, or if you accidentally do 2, it doesn't matter. Just, you don't want it showing on the back. Come through to there. Leave a little bit. And then I'm just going to do an in and an out that way. And then turn it around. Just do a little locking stitch there and then come back out with this one like that. Then I'm going to go in and out once like that, and then chop off that end by pulling it gently and snip. And because you've gone up the way that the line is going, it'll hide that piece of thread even better. Right, let's talk stitch length. I've done smaller stitches around the outside. I just find that holds it better, especially if you're covering up the bit you didn't want to top stitch it. So you just did it as part of the decoration and put these along the edge. But now you're on to the actual Zokin. You can use bigger stitches. You can do substantially bigger stitches. In the ideal world, then the more consistent your stitch size, the neater it will look. In Caroline's world, if you can get the stitches done, you're happy. The fact that I'm going to be quite in line because I'm following my drawing will be a big improvement for me, because I don't usually draw the lines on. Unless if I'm quilting a quilt, I will. But for this sort of thing, I don't. There we go. We got it all done in one. These big stitches, they're traditionally used in sashiko and things like that. I'm not sure it's sashiko. I think it's sashiko. I'm not quite sure. I am slowly learning Japanese. I'm on Duolingo. And I know it's weird. I've been learning French. I'm quite proficient in French. It's just sort of topping up on phrases I don't know, things like that. And some things like subjunctive and that are quite difficult. So I'm learning that, but very slowly. I'm having fun learning other languages. So I'm learning Norwegian. And I dabble a little bit in German. I'm learning Japanese in case I ever get to go to Japan, which is on my bucket list. And so I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced. I'll have to check. There we go. So that's one line done already. And look at that. I love the contrast in colours. Anyway, I was supposed to be talking about stitch length. I've got distracted again. It's not like me to get distracted, is it? Anyway, stitch length. These stitches can be quite big. And it reminds me, I know this is a traditional Japanese form of sewing, which has been around for a long, long, long time. But there's also, when you're making a quilt, you generally try to make as small a stitch as you can when you're doing the quilting part. That's just traditionally, it's more neater, it shows more skill on the part of the person who's quilting. But there is a style of quilt. In the Depression, generally ladies who were making quilts, they didn't have the time to do all these fancy-dancy little stitches because it is very time-consuming. So they used to do bigger stitches because they'd make a quilt and they just needed to sell it quickly because they needed to buy more fabric for the next quilt and they needed to feed the children. Oh, look, a little bit too short. So I just took a break so I could get that done. I kept unthreading my needle and it was really frustrating. Just finish off that piece of thread. Anyway, as I was saying, the ladies used to need to do their quilting very, very quickly, so they started doing larger stitches. And that stitch is now known as depression stitch or depression quilting. I can see how some people don't like it. They'd rather, oh, look, I didn't pull that all the way through. I'll put that back there and I'll remind me to show you how to fix that if you accidentally make a silly mistake like that. Right, so I'm now going to go down the next bit. And I've completely forgotten where I was talking about depression stitch. Yes, some people don't like depression stitch. They think, no, it's got to be. The purists would say, no, you really need small stitches. Doesn't look right with big stitches. I don't mind either way. I think a medium length looks good. I know that sounds weird. I like the very, very fine stitching. I still can't do it. I'm working at it. One day I may get the hang of it. So well, when I start, my stitches are bigger and then they slowly get smaller. So my quilts are very oddly quilted. I really should get a little bit of quilt that I can just practice, do a minute or two on that and then switch to my main quilt. But I don't, so my quilts are rather odd. But I like a sort of medium-sized stitch because you can see them. I don't see any problem with that myself. But I know everything is down to personal taste. But one thing with the bigger stitching with these is it does go, because I'm used to mainly quilting quilts, very confusing, isn't it? Quilting quilts, then this is a real luxury to do. Have you made all your Christmas presents? How are you doing? Are you making or are you buying this year for friends? Are you cutting down because it's getting more and more popular to shrink your circle of friends that you actually give gifts to, which I think is a really clever idea because it costs a fortune when you have to buy for every one of your workmates. Then you have to buy for the family, the extended family, your friends, your children's friends. It can get out of hand. There we go. There's another one done. And you can see how quick this goes, but you can take longer. Some of the ones I'm going to show you did take a lot longer. because the stitching is a lot more intense. But really, you're just trying to hold the layers together. You don't want anywhere where there's such a big gap that it can slub over and go all wrinkly and horrible. A little bit of wrinkle is good. I think it adds character. So I'll get back to you when I've finished my lines, and I'll show you just how different it is to be sewing curves, especially small ones. This lumpy loopy bit there I've missed. Go in between the layers, put your needle to the side of just the one part of the loop, and if you wiggle and pull, eventually you'll be able to swipe it sideways from inside, and although it won't be completely disappeared, it'll be a lot less obvious. There we go. It does take a bit of fiddling, as you can see there. I didn't want to just jump and say, ta-da, it is awkward. And you can see it there, but it's much better than it looked before I did that. Right, so now we're on to the flowers. Well, this is going from being a nice, simple coloured Zokin, all blending in and looking very coordinated, to being an in-your-face one. So, let's have a look. We'll come down there on the petal. Out right by the roundy bit, and yep, it's in the right, it's inside the fabric, and I should really put a little stitch there, shouldn't I? I'm not concentrating. I do find it difficult to concentrate and chat, but I do enjoy chatting, so I'll just chat, and if I make mistakes, I make mistakes. It's always nice to have you join me in my sewing room. Now I'm going to do slightly smaller stitches because, as you will see here, you can't really, I'm pushing it to do another stitch there. It's just going to pull the fabric, pull the stitching. So I'm just going to do smaller stitches and less of them. It's the only way really that I can cope with curves. I'm sure somebody else has managed to do it, but for me, that's the best way. It's still quicker than doing individual stitches. So now I'm going to lock on there with a very small stitch and come down inside the fabric, which is easier said than done. Start another petal. You can see I've drawn them roughly, but it doesn't matter. You can even interpret the shape as you go in, think, oh, I'm going to make that petal a bit fatter, thinner, longer, shorter. You can do what you like. Same principle, just fewer stitches. Have you ever used a thimble like this? How do you get on with them? When I first got one, I was a little bit sceptical. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use that. It looks really awkward, but it is the best for this job. And I love it now. It didn't take, well, I don't know how long it took, but it wasn't very long before I completely adjusted. Probably minutes, because I had tried doing it without this thimble, and oh, it was really painful. So you can see you just go up and down every petal until you've gone all the way around. And then I'll get back to you to do the centres. So that is the flowers done. I decided to go completely zany. Put 4 different colours in. Now I need to get the flower centres. Now, you can do some clever things with flower centres if you want to when you're sewing. But I think for this, you're better off going simple and just drawing another outline, because really Zokins are outlines. If you want to be strictly traditional, even though this really isn't strictly traditional because I fancied going a bit bonkers. I'm just going to do the running stitch around the centre, and it is really difficult. Sometimes I can't even manage 2 stitches when I'm doing a really tight circle like this. I was going to make different colour centres, and then I thought, well, it really needs a bit of unifying, otherwise the centre doesn't fit with the outside. So what I decided to do was to use the same colour as I've used for the outside stitching, and to use that for every flower centre. Just finishing this off. Pale yellow really isn't a good idea for dark colours or dark coloured thread, because you will see it, but I don't mind. Oops. There we go. Cut it a little bit too long, just give it a scratch and usually it'll pop in. Have I got another mistake there? No, it's okay. I thought I did for a second then. What I love about making these, it is so portable. I think this is the most portable stitching you can do. And also the most mindless, because like if you're just doing straight lines and you don't care if they're not perfectly straight, you can just settle down, watch the TV, stitch away, and you can come up with something that looks really wonderful. It's a great way of using up your old embroidery threads, little odds and ends, because you don't have to use a unified colour all the way through. And I'll show you a good way of disguising any thread you don't really like. A way of using it on a Zokin. It'll still look good. I'm trying to get a little stitch in the back of there. That's why I'm a little bit distracted. There we go. And then through again. And out. I've got so many things I'm going to show you at the end of this video. I hope I remember them all. Now there's no problem at all with using patterns for this sort of thing. Or patterned fabric. But you have to take into consideration you will see the other side, so that may not work well for you. Now, why is that there? Look, it's sticking out. Watch you don't snip your material when you're snipping those fabrics the threads close. It is easily done. What I like to do if I'm using a pattern, sometimes I'll use a pattern and go over the shapes on the pattern. That works best if you put a plain marking on it. What I like to do is get a very small pattern and then completely ignore it. If you see what I mean. That way then it just looks fine. You get away with it. If anything, it's like a good contrast, I think. See, because I'm not doing the proper Zokin stitching here, I'm just reverting back to sewing a normal running stitch, which is getting very heavy. So let's try and make myself do this the proper way. Oh, I love these. I'm looking out the window and I can see the sunshine. We don't often get sunshine in December. It's a weird December this year. Different parts of the country are getting so many different types of weather. And today it's looking absolutely gorgeous out there. But I think tonight we're down to -1 degree centigrade. So it's going to be chilly later on. I think it's up to 5 today. But inside, if you've got the heating on indoors and the sun shining through, it feels like the summer. Well, not quite the summer. It's nice and warm if you've got a jumper and thick woolly socks on. We're nearly at the end of this. It's difficult to say exactly how long this has taken me because I keep turning my camera on and off. But I would say all told, 2 hours you can get something as fiddly as this done. It would be a lot quicker. 1, if you just do plain lines. And 2, if you haven't got to keep checking your monitor, which really slows me down and find out I've wandered off screen or something. So if you allow yourself 2 hours, see how that goes. But I would say 2 hours per medium size Zokin with not much patterning on it. And that all depends on the speed you stitch anyway. Right, now I'm going to pop my iron. I was going to say then I was going to pop my onion on. Click that. It's one of those days today. I think whenever I'm under time pressure, I get everything wrong. So now I can bring this up here. You can see if you want to, you can draw extra lines on here. And if you've done it like this, you can then roughly guess where the middle is and it'll be a lot more uniform. If you're going for uniform, you can also put some seed stitch just all around here. I'm not going to, purely because of time restraints. Normally I would put a lot more stitching on these. Is my iron warm enough? Yep, I love these pens. Just run over them with a hot iron and all your lines are gone. So you can get the ones that wash off, but then if you get something wrong, you've got to either wash your item or just go over it and then it all comes off in the final wash. You can't keep washing the thing. With this, even if you make one little mistake, you can use this as an eraser, rub it out and redraw. So there we go, one Zokin made with one of these little special thimbles, which doesn't look like a traditional thimble at all, does it? But let me show you some more ideas. First of all, I'll show you the other ones that I've made. Now, these are a lot more intense on the stitching. You'll see what I mean when I show you. That one there, you've got this one, which I went over. Oh, look, I meant to iron that off. Back in a second. There we go. There was enough heat left in my iron. I went over the flower on this side, but then you can see it just looks a bit of a mess on the other side, which isn't a problem. There's no harm in having a right and wrong side anyway. But I just put a completely contrasting straight line. You know, there's no white on this other than the sewing. I show you there, and I like that. I think you get away with that very easily. This was about the first time I'd made one actually embroidering around the flower, and then I realised, no, that's not working. So I use a plain usually on the back nowadays if I want to embroider around a shape, which I usually don't. I try to stick to smaller. This is about the biggest pattern you could get away with doing this. There's this one. I love the contrast of this with the white, really showed up against the bright colours, and because these are straight lines, I did some zigzaggy lines, lots and lots and lots of them. That was so therapeutic. It settled down, and the hand, the way you can feel this, it just feels wonderful. I love the slightly smaller stitches personally. So it's that one. I got this pink one, which was, it's off the same item as this, as you can see, just a different colourway, same dress. I went out in lines coming from the centre there, and I love the look on that as well. So I think both of those work really well with a basic pattern and then completely contrasting straight boring stitches. Now this I'm putting in because it's really not very good. I was practicing my freehand sewing on my sewing machine, and I didn't get the tension right. It's all loops on the back. But I'm going to pop that in anyway, because if they want to use one as a floor cloth or something, they can use this. And even if they only use it once or twice and throw it away, I don't mind. It was a practice piece that I thought, well, let's turn it into Zokin. I've got this one. Now, this is the way. Oh, look how wonky you are. Let me straighten you up. There we go. This one almost looks like a placemat, doesn't it? I did this all with machine stitching to show you what you can do if you're really in a hurry with machine stitching. Just do all your lines. It's not perfect. It's not a genuine Zokin for one, or authentic, but it's the same principles. Layers of tatty thin fabric joined together and sewn up. It's just that we've used a more modern method, and we've used a sewing machine. And then this is the latest one I did, which is two-sided, but it seems to have worked, sort of. It's just fabric off an old dress again, really thin, 3 layers. So I drew some circles and then went smaller and smaller and smaller. Oh, I need to iron those as well. So I can get away with this. Almost cold now. Yep, they're coming off. They're not too hot, but they're melting my lino. In case you haven't seen this before, I'm not lying on the floor doing this on my kitchen floor or something. I've just got a piece of lino to hide my very grubby and scratched cutting mat. Picked it up free at a shop. They were getting rid of it, so I thought, I'll have that. So I did these circles, and then I don't know if you can see, it was a good idea at the time, coordinating green stitches coming down here and white stitches coming down here, and sort of doing the shapes of the lines on the fabric. They really don't show up. When you're looking at it like that, mainly you can see the blues, but you can feel it. When you're holding it like this, and you can see they scrunch up wonderfully. You can't damage them. And then there's the back. And because there were lots of lines, I've got away with the lines. They seem to have sort of matched up on both sides. So which one do you like? We've got all these different, we've got the blue, the purple, the green, the pink, the yellow, the orange, and the neutrals, we'll call that one. Which one's your favourite? I think my favourite is probably this one because of the motion. It makes your eyes go funny, doesn't it? Oh, look, that needs an iron as well. You can see I love using these iron-off pens, and then I forget to iron them off. I don't know whether you'll seal them on too much if you do wash them forgetting they're there, whether that will set the colour. I don't know. I've never done it yet. But one day I'm going to forget. There we go. That's better. So, yeah, so you've got all those. I think mine is going to be this one because of the movement on it, followed, funnily enough, by the same fabric, but just with the disco dancing lines, or the mellow dancing lines. So there is my pile of Zokins ready to go off to Santa to be delivered Christmas morning to their new recipient. That's it. Zokin class is over. School's out for the term. We are now off on a Christmas break, so have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you to everyone for your likes, your comments, for subscribing. It's so lovely to know that I've got you here with me in my sewing room. Good company you are. And I'll see you all next time. But until then, don't forget, happy stitching and have fun. Bye.